The roll for determination of quorum, please.
Kim Toulouse,
Present.
Clay Thomas,
Present.
Christina Hill. Here. Lee Lawrence,
Here.
Brad Stanley.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Lawrence, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thanks. If we could have the ethics law announcement, Mr. Edwards?
Board members are reminded that if with respect to any matter or any person coming before the board today, you have received a gift or loan, you have a pecuniary interest or a commitment in a private capacity such as a family, employment, business, or similar relationship, you must disclose that gift, loan, interest, or commitment at the time the matter is being considered. And you must abstain from deliberation or voting on the matter if it is clear that the gift, loan, interest, or commitment would materially affect the independence of judgment of a reasonable person. Board members are also reminded that under the Board of Adjustment rules, if you have had any contact outside this meeting with any persons interested in a matter coming before the board today, you should disclose the nature of that contact at this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Mr. Webb, appeal procedure, please.
With pleasure. Most decisions rendered by the Board of Adjustment are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Board of Adjustment and you want to appeal its action, you may do so in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is reduced to writing, filed with the Secretary of the Board of Adjustment, and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-3066 for information on the appeal procedure and the application fee. I might remind the board and the audience that all 6 items on today's public hearing agenda are appealable.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment? This public comment period is for items that are on or off the agenda. I'd like to remind anyone who does wish to express public comment that you're limited to 3 minutes, and please fill out a speaker form for our secretary. Madam Secretary?
Yes, we have Kathy Brandhorst.
Also the United States President. Excuse me? I am the United States President. I just wanted to let you know I still live at the Donner Motel. And this morning we had a gentleman drive up on top of the property in the parking lot. The truck did have a label on it. I forgot the name of the label. He pretends that he has a business. Instead, what he did was he broke into somebody's home, a room, and we all live in rooms. And these are our homes. We don't have nowhere else to go. We have no place to live except for the Donner Motel. I just wanted to tell you that gentleman never had a chance because he pushed the door wide open and started beating him to death. Oh my. And this man never had a chance because he also carried a gun, and a gun went off and shot him because he knew something about this gentleman who was driving this truck. And he has no business. No, he doesn't even work for the business either. Oh my. So I just wanted to let you know who's going to stop this gentleman from going to people's homes and beating them to death and shooting them to death because they know who he is on that truck. I just wanted to tell you too that he has no business on that property. He doesn't live there. He doesn't even belong on the property at all. Why are they letting him get away with another murder? He was never arrested, and what happened to the police? The only person that did arrive was Marston. He plays a sheriff, He plays a police officer, but he never does no arrests at all. This gentleman got away with murder right inside his own home, his own room where he lives. And nobody took the chance to have this man arrested. Not at all. He should be in jail and serve time in jail and then wait for his court case to come up. But you see, this is not happening in this city at all. And I just wanted to let you know, too, you're supposed to be in prison when you are told by the courts that you go to prison. Life in prison. You're not even in prison either.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Do we have any other public comment at this time? Thank you. We'll close this portion of the public comment. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the draft minutes from the last meeting, which was on December 1st.
So moved.
And seconded. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. None opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Pardon me. Now we'll move on to the public hearing period. The first item on the agenda is for item 8A, which is special use permit case number WSUP 16-0001, Burdick Excavating, Mr. Giesinger.
Good afternoon. Is this on? Good afternoon, Chair Toulouse, members of the board. You hear me? No? Okay, thanks. Chad Giesinger, Senior Planner with the Community Services Department, Planning and Development Division for the record. This is special use permit case WSUP 16-001, Ophir Hill, which is a request for a special use permit for major grading and also approval of a code compliance plan per code section 125.160, which is the administrative enforcement ordinance for the county. Pictured before you right now is the subject property in question. It's all of that disturbed area you see there and the piles of rock. See if this works. Here we go. Zooming out, here's the vicinity map for the area. It's in the northwestern portion of Washoe Valley, right off of old Highway US 395. For background, the subject site actually consists of 3 parcels totaling 11.35 acres, all of which you saw has been disturbed. The property is zoned high-density rural and has a master plan designation of rural. All of the surrounding immediately adjacent parcels are similarly zoned, except for the large BLM open space parcel to the east, which is general rural. There are single-family residential houses to the northwest and south of the site, and the aforementioned BLM open space to the east. 1983, the Slide Mountain landslide deposited approximately 160,000 cubic yards of dirt and rock on the subject parcels. And since that time, for over the past 30 years, the landowners have been clearing that debris from the property through removal through commercial sale. Washoe County Code, however, classifies that type of business activity as an aggregate facility, which is an industrial use. The high-density rural regulatory zone does not allow that industrial use. Due to a recent code complaint about the use, the code enforcement took action and investigated. Apparently, there hadn't been a complaint up until this point, and the operation had been going on for some time. After investigating, enforcement staff faced 2 options in trying to bring the site into compliance. They could either demand an immediate cessation of the commercial use, which likely would have resulted in civil lawsuit proceedings, which can go on for quite some time, or use the administrative ordinance I mentioned in the beginning, Washoe County Code 125-160, which has a process in it that allows for a time frame to be developed if a overall code compliance plan is approved. So you can come into compliance over a period of time through that process. Staff chose to pursue that second option, the administrative enforcement action and approval of a compliance plan. The civil injunction could have ceased the operation immediately, but it probably would have perpetuated the current condition of the site for quite some time, that being all of the material stored there. So staff began negotiations with the property owner to see if we could come up with a code compliance plan. And ultimately, we did come to agreement. The applicant initially requested a 10-year time frame for compliance to remove all the materials and cease the use. But staff felt this was too lengthy amount of time to come into compliance and end the illegal use. Once the compliance plan was agreed to, staff said prior to submission of the SUP, we want you to notify all your neighbors of this planning process, everyone within 500 feet of the plant, that you're going to continue to operate for no longer than 4 years, at the end of which the site will be restored, and if you have any concerns, to contact the county. The applicant did do that, and the county did not receive any calls from the noticed neighbors. So what will the code compliance plan do? It'll require all processed material to be removed from the site and the termination of commercial operations within 4 years. It will require regrading and restoration of the site so that it will be suitable for future residential use, which is what the site is actually zoned for. Require revegetation with native seed, removal of the commercial equipment that's currently there, and a prohibition on any expansion of the operations. So they can continue to operate as is until the operations cease. So why an SUP? Well, the regrading and material removal components of the compliance plan triggers major grading because there's so much material on site. Approximately 9.56 acres of grading disturbance overall will occur, and obviously it's already been disturbed. And as part of the regrading, 38,834 cubic yards of material will be excavated, as well as portions removed. As you can see there, major grading is triggered when more than 4 acres is disturbed or more than 5,000 cubic yards of material is excavated, so it's well beyond those thresholds. So just to be clear, wrapping up the background section, what the BOA is being asked to do on this item, you're being asked to approve a special use permit for major grading and approve the associated code compliance plan, which is actually going to be part of the conditions of approval to the SUP. So the plan, so to speak, are actually going to be conditions of approval to the SUP. So the BOA is not being asked to approve the aggregate facility use, which is illegal. You're being asked to approve a plan to terminate that existing use through a phased compliance plan. Here's the current condition of the site with the material estimates, just to give you an idea of the range of material that exists and will need to be removed or regraded, ranging from the small 12-inch rock and sand that they have sorted there all the way up to the 36-inch and larger diameter boulders. I know this is a little tough to see, but this is the proposed regrading plan. The limits of disturbance are those dashed lines you see there, and then the darker contour lines running across are the proposed contours. The existing contour is a little hard to see, but basically it's just a bunch of meandering piles because everything's kind of flat right now. So the restoration plan would essentially rebalance materials on the site and create a gradual downsloping from the highway going east across the 11-acre site. About a 30-foot elevation difference from the highway to the far eastern edge there of the site, and then the large boulders will be removed through the continuing commercial operation. Any questions so far on that site plan? Okay. As I mentioned, the conditions of approval will constitute the actual compliance plan. But the conditions of approval, as with any special use permit, will also address some fairly typical operational parameters. And on a use like this, operations, we generally try to limit to daylight hours, so that's going to be a condition of approval that's proposed by staff. No starting earlier than 6 a.m. with machinery and removal of rock. There has been crushing of rock, it's my understanding, or sorting in the past. We would like a condition prohibiting that crushing of rock as incompatible with surrounding residential use. No subsurface or pit mining. The applicant says they don't intend to do that anyways. As I mentioned, no expansion of operations, but we're going to put that in as a condition, and then the revegetation. Condition of approval is included that specifically states no extension of the 4-year deadline will be allowed. We don't want to get to the end of this process and have it keep getting strung out over and over again. So if we get to the end of that 4-year time frame and we haven't achieved compliance, then of course legal action will have to occur after that. The regrading plan will actually be an ongoing process. So as materials are being removed, they will then start the regrading process at that particular location. Staff's already received the grading plans. They can be approved once, if and when this SUP is approved, then that grading permit will then be signed off on. Only materials currently present on the site will be part of this. We wanted to make sure there's condition in there so that the owner can't bring in materials from another site and store them and then move them. So that'll be another condition of approval. And then lastly, material loads will need to be tarped and treated for dust or loose material. That's standard practice with aggregate operations. Here are all the reviewing agencies staff sent the application to. We are erring on the side of caution here. This is more agencies than we normally send applications to. But only 3 out of those 13 reviewing agencies requested conditions of approval, and they are listed there: Planning and Development, Engineering, and Health District. It's attached as Condition A to the or Exhibit A to the staff report. Incline Village Citizen Advisory Board does not meet during the winter, so the item did not go before them. They were provided a copy of the application. Staff did not receive any comments from CAB members. Staff did receive one comment from a West Washoe Valley property owner stating that they felt no extension of the 4-year compliance timeframe should be allowed. Staff responded to them stating it's already a condition of approval that will be included as condition F2. Here are the properties that were noticed. The 500 feet did not result in the minimum required 30 parcels, so staff went beyond that 500 feet, tried to select parcels that had houses on them in lieu of vacant property, and you see the extent of the noticing there. The board is required to make certain findings for the approval of special use permits. They're listed there: consistency with the master plan, adequate improvements, site suitability, issue it's not detrimental, and effect on a military installation. Analysis of the findings is provided in the staff report starting on page 11, and staff feels all of the findings can be made. So, staff recommendation is for approval with conditions. And here's a motion for consideration. That'll open up to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Giesinger. I still have to get used to these mics. They're a little different, so. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Giesinger from the board? Well, he's up there. Nothing, okay. Thank you, Mr. Giesinger. Does the applicant here and wish to speak?
Good afternoon. My name is Linda Burdick. My husband and I are the owners of these parcels, and I would like to share with you a very short PowerPoint presentation that will illustrate to you the conditions before, and hopefully we can remediate that. Maybe. Help.
Chad, can you see if you can give her a hand figuring out what's going on there? There we go.
Okay. No, that's not me. Not on the front.
Wrong one.
Just a minute, she has to bring up the right PowerPoint, and then when you do that, she'll be able to click the device, so just give her a moment. Staff's actually doing it right there, just a moment.
Oh, gotta load it.
Yeah, just wait. Don't
I
get too anxious.
apologize if any of you had to live through this horrible event, and it's reminding you of it again. It was quite an event. None of you look old enough to have lived through it, however. 1982? That wasn't a joke at all. This is basically my cover. This is a overview of the slide where it initiated up at the top of Slide Mountain. And I have a little pointer here. The property in question, is still in question, is right down here at the bottom is where the majority of the material actually ended up on our parcels. Now I'm going to share some of the pictures that were in the local newspapers at the time. This is an example of the volume and the end result of this slide that, as you know, took place in '83. The property on which this landed, that house was removed, and the people survived the slide because they ran up to the second floor. This is a police officer that had to be pulled out of part of the slide. His life was obviously in danger. This is the new US 395 that had to be closed because that material made its way all the way out to the new 395. A picture of a horse being evacuated by helicopter. Another house with an overturned truck. Another shot of the material making its way all the way to 395. And this is a picture of a gentleman on the top of the rock that landed up on his property also. Now I'd like to just share with you what usage we've had of this material. We have sorted it by size. There's been no excavation that's taken place on this site other than the slide material. This is a project that we did shortly after the slide in Tahoe Hills up in the basin. Most of this rock material has been used on projects in Washoe County. We will take a slope that looks like this, and it ends up like this. This happens to be at the bottom of Diamond Peak Fairway in Incline Village. This is an example of how this rock is being used for environmental purposes. On the left, they used to specify a wood retaining wall that was treated with arsenic, actually, that if it caught fire, it was dangerous to humans and animals. This method of rock slope stabilization is, as you see on the right-hand side, is very, very effective and used throughout the Tahoe Basin regularly. We've done this in Incline Village with it, built culverts underneath Incline Way. This is Blackwood Canyon. We've rebuilt that stream. This is a fun one. This is in Incline Village also. This is the existing condition of the upper middle Rosewood Creek in Incline. It goes through Third Creek. This is what it looked like when it started, and this is what it looks like now. It's right on the corner of Northwood and Route 28. And there's massive amounts of rock underground to maintain that floodplain. Another use in Tahoe City, the museum. Incline Village, this is Third Creek. Third Creek. This goes underneath Route 28 in Incline Village. And the product has been utilized very effectively with the TRPA in Tahoe Basin. Last fall, they gave out 9 awards for excellence with environmental projects in the Tahoe Basin, and we got 4 of them. So the rock is being well used for environmental purposes. And I thank you very much for watching.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Okay, seeing none, we will open it up for public comment. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment on this one?
Yes, we have Mike Raley.
Good afternoon. For the record, Mike Raley with Rubicon Design Group. I'm here representing Burdick Excavating. We prepared the special use permit package, and I just want to state on the record that we're in concurrence with the conditions, and that really the grading plan is essentially a restoration plan that was submitted, so that's why the grading is occurring. We're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Anyone? Ms. Hill?
So does Burdick Excavation own the property?
Yes.
And what's going to happen at the end of the 4 years after it's restored?
I'll let Mrs. Burdick
Okay, I
address.
should have asked you, sorry.
Our goal, Christine, is to regrade it into an aesthetically pleasing site, because when we first came to it, the grade of the old 395 is about 22 feet above the
Right.
existing grade, because it was built up to build that road. So we hope to slope it from the old 395 and then gradually undulate and make it aesthetically pleasing and potentially put 4 or 5 homes on it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. Stanley?
This isn't so much, thank you. This isn't so much a question, but this is really a very nice package and very well done. And so thank you, Chad. Thank you, applicant and representative. That's great. And I think that's it for, is that PowerPoint available to us either unofficially or officially on the slide, Mount Slide situation?
Of course. I have it with me. I can give it to you if you want.
It's actually a part of the public record, and it will be a part of the public record. So if any BOA member would like a copy, you can let myself know, or the recording secretary will get a copy to you, and the public can get it off the website.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Thank you, Mr. Stanley. Anyone else? Okay, any further public comment? Madam Secretary, did I already do that? I may have already done that.
You did that, but we have another one.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy Brandhorst?
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I'm also the United States President. I just wanted to let you know, evictions. Have we left out the evictions? I hope not, because I just heard that they are putting up poles and wires. You know what that means? They cannot afford to live there at all. They're just moving themselves
Excuse me,
into a
Ms.
place where they
Brandhorst?
don't even
Ms.
live.
Brandhorst, I hate to interrupt you, but at this point, we are specifically on this particular item on the agenda. Do you
Yes.
have an item, do you have a discussion that relates to this particular item?
Yes, I am talking about this specific item. And I just wanted to tell you, you know, if you're going to allow them to move in with poles and wires, I heard it. And if you did not hear it, then I think you're all into this on your own to move in somebody that doesn't even have a contract.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Anyone else?
We have no further requests for public comment.
Thank you. We'll close the public comment period and bring it back to the board. Before the board gets into discussions, do we have any disclosures from any board members? Mr. Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This might qualify as a disclosure. It certainly might provide information. I took the liberty of getting in touch with the CAB associated with this project, several CAB members individually, and it actually did come up in their last CAB meeting. They canceled one, but this just recently happened, and learned that this particular project got a unanimous approval from the CAB.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley. Anyone else? Any other disclosures? Seeing no other disclosures, we'll bring it to the board. I guess I have a disclosure. It's not, I don't know if it's pertinent or not, but I'll throw it out there. I worked for Truckee Meadows Fire at the time of the incident and was there that day. So I don't know if that's an appropriate disclosure or not, but throw it out there, Mr. Edwards. Okay. Any other, okay, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Any discussion?
I think it's a good project.
Okay.
Good solution to a problem.
The only comment I have is, I thank Ms. Burdick for thinking I wasn't born yet, but I was actually driving down the highway, coming back from Merced College, watching a buddy of mine play football, and this slide was actually happening while we were driving down 395. It was starting to come over the road and course down the side, and we got through it, of course. Okay, so I am in support of this. I think it's wonderful. I know some people down on Franktown. Every time I go by there, I'm not trying to make this sound funny, but it's just something that's so out of place, and I'm so glad that you guys are doing this, and it's going to be great for the community.
Anyone else?
I would, thank you. I would concur with everything else said here by the other members, and it seems like a classic case of making lemonade, and seems to not only solve a problem, but create a service, and has been for quite some time. So I concur with the thanks for that.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley. Anyone else? I usually sometimes get a little cranky with these because we're correcting an issue that happened a long time ago. And in this particular case, I can't really go there because you guys have dealt with this, I think, in a pretty appropriate manner and have worked with Chad in coming up with the corrective actions over the next 4 years. So I think that's admirable. And so the chair will entertain a motion. Mr. Stanley.
I would like to move, and in fact, I move that, after giving recent consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustments approve special use permit case number WSUP 16-001 with the conditions of approval included as Exhibit A for this matter for Burdick Excavating, having made all 5 findings in accordance with Washoe County Code Section 110.810.30. Number 1, consistency, that the proposed use is consistent with the action programs, policies, standards, and maps of the master plan and the South Valleys Area Plan. 2, improvements, that adequate utilities, roadway improvements, sanitation, water supply, drainage, and other necessary facilities have been provided. Let's see. The proposed improvements are properly related to existing and proposed roadways, and an adequate public facility determination has been made in accordance with Division 7, site suitability, that the site is physically suitable for the type of development and for the intensity of such a development. Number 5, am I reading the right thing?
Number 4.
Number 4, issuance not detrimental. The issuance of the permit will not significantly be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, injurious to the property or improvements of adjacent properties, or detrimental to the character of the surrounding area. And number 5, the effect on a military installation. Issuance of the permit will not have a detrimental effect on the location, purpose, or mission of the military installation.
Seconded by Ms. Hill. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on, move right on into the next one. Item 8B, variance case number WPVAR 16-001, Meyer McSherry. And Mr. Giesinger, you're up again.
Thank you, Chair Toulouse, members of the board. Chad Giesinger, Senior Planner of Community Services Department, Planning and Development, for the record. This is variance case number WPVAR 16-001 for Meyer McSherry. Pictured there is an overview of the property located between Washoe Road and Tuscarora Road. Zooming out, here's your overall vicinity map. It's in Crystal Bay, up on those windy parallel streets there, and there's a neighborhood inset. Subject property is zoned high-density suburban, which requires 20-foot front and rear setbacks and a 5-foot setback. This application is requesting a reduction of the front yard setback from 20 feet to 7.1 feet, and a reduction of the side yard setback from 5 feet to 3.5 feet. The purpose of the variance is to allow construction of a garage and an associated hallway/bridge connection to the existing house, which is a very old cabin-like style house. There is no garage currently present at the site, but there is an existing parking pad that has pavers, which is partially in the street right-of-way. Tuscarora Road is a very narrow road, 25-foot width. Here is a picture of that parking pad. You can see how it drops off steeply to the downslope side there, and the pavers, and then there's the existing house pictured on the right there. Here's another overview of the site looking uphill. So this would be the back of the property, just to give you an idea of the nature of the slope here, and also point out the slope stabilization elements all along the multiple houses in this particular part of Tuscarora. This is the existing site plan showing the house footprint, and you can see the pavers there, how they encroach into the Tuscarora Road a little ways, and then those rockery walls. And this is the plan to add the garage. The red outline is the actual setback envelope, and the yellow line is the existing house you can see, which is already within the front yard setback and very close to the road. And then the brown outline is the proposed garage addition. And then you may see there, in between the garage and the house, there's a very large diameter pine tree, over 43 inches in diameter, which they're trying to maintain and build around. Here's elevations of what the finished construction would look like. There's the aforementioned tree and the garage, and then the hallway connection. On the bottom is the back elevation. Here's your side elevations. You can see the nature of the slope there and the step-down building approach. So in terms of the surrounding parcels, this one is actually a little bit wider than some of the ones further down Tuscarora. So it isn't exceptionally narrow, but it is extremely steep, as you were seeing in some of those elevations and in the pictures. And as I mentioned, the existing residence built in 1966 is already well within the front yard setback, approximately 2 feet from the property line at its closest point. As I mentioned, there is no garage. Obviously, on-street parking is very limited along Tuscarora, especially now with all the snow. And most of the houses on this street, especially on the downsloping side, are built within the front yard setback up to street level. Staff feels special circumstances do exist on this site due to the topography and some very large trees. Staff feels approval would not represent a detriment to the public good. Upslope property views would actually be a little bit better with this design than it would be if they met the 20-foot setback. They'd have to build farther back down the hill. And of course, it would also provide additional off-street parking were it approved. Staff feels there's no grant of special privileges. As mentioned, there's similar adjacent properties and setback relief up and down Tuscarora, as well as the existing house inside the setback. And the proposed use is an authorized use. It's as an accessory to the main dwelling. And a military installation is not affected, so it's not mentioned here. Here are the reviewing agencies staff sent the application to. Standard agencies for Tahoe. 3 out of the 7 agencies responded. Again, it was planning and development with conditions of approval, land development, and engineering. Those conditions are contained in Exhibit A, your staff report. And I want to apologize, during my last presentation, I mentioned this, and I got my cases mixed up. As you mentioned, Mr. Stanley, yes, the Southwest Truckee Meadows CAB did review the previous application. They did approve it unanimously. This application, Incline Village, Crystal Bay CAB, does not meet in the winter, so they did not review it, but I did not receive any comments from the CAB. I did receive a comment earlier this week, however, from the adjacent neighbor at 390 Tuscarora, objecting to the variance. And you may have received materials. I believe he is planning on attending the meeting today and providing testimony. But the comments were received this past Monday, so I did not have, the staff report had already gone out, so I didn't have the ability to discuss that. But the concerns cited in the letter provided to staff included negative visual impacts to his house, loss of privacy due to the new garage being close to his house, concerns over maintenance and snow storage and snow shedding, and potential alteration of the drainage between the 2 houses, and the slope stabilization rock walls. And I'm sure he'll provide more detail if he's here today to testify. Here's the public notice map. Quite a few parcels noticed due to the proximity and small nature of the parcels in the Incline Crystal Bay area. Here are the required findings by code for the board to make in approving a variance. Special circumstances, no detriment, no special privileges, youth authorized, and effect on a military installation. Staff analysis of the findings is provided on page 9. Staff believes you can make all those findings. And staff is recommending approval with conditions. With that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Giesinger. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I do for
Mr.
Chad.
Lawrence.
Chad, I just had a question. Is the tree considered a special circumstance in this? Or is it topography we're talking about?
It's mostly topography. I guess you could say the tree's an extenuating circumstance. I mean, the TRPA does have an ordinance about protecting trees. It's their ordinance, not ours. The county doesn't have a specific ordinance about protecting trees. So, yeah, technically you're correct. That's not a special circumstance.
Okay, so I just
Yeah.
needed to clarify that the tree is not
Yeah.
a special circumstance in this. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Giesinger. Is the applicant present and wish to speak?
Good afternoon, Chairman and board members. My name is Dale Smith. I'm present with the applicant, Chuck Meyer and Suzanne McSherry. My firm, Smith Design Group, is the one that prepared the application, and we've reviewed the application. I think Mr. Gessinger did a admirable job in preparing the presentation, and we have reviewed the conditions of approval and concur. We have no problem with any of them. If there's any questions, I could answer those.
Anyone have any questions? Ms. Hill?
Hi, Dale. If the tree in question was found to be a hazard tree because it has multiple tops to it, it looks like it, at one time, was sheared off at the top and started growing little trees at the top. That's considered a hazard tree? I mean, if that is considered a hazard tree, wouldn't it be possible to move the garage closer to the existing house instead of having that bridge and having to encroach on that side yard setback like that? Is there a difference in slope there? I don't know.
No, the reason for the request for these 18 inches into the side yard setback was simply to give the tree 18 inches more of roots. Typically, you know, I'm comfortable if a tree is within 5 feet of a foundation line, but this tree is quite a bit larger, and I felt that we needed as much breathing room as we could get to not damage the roots during excavation for the garage, and that was the reason for the request. The adjacent home is far enough from the proposed garage that snow sliding off the roof is not a consideration. And 18 inches seemed like a small amount to give up in order to keep the tree. I understand that the tree is home to a bear. There's one that likes to stay in that tree, so we were trying our best to keep it. It's rather large and a good-looking tree.
Except for the top. Okay, I just was wondering, the slope, there's no difference in the slope. If you could get rid of the tree, you could have the garage attached to the house instead of having the breezeway.
Correct.
That's all.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your distance that you came up with of the 8 feet, what is that based upon? Was there a forester or someone that said you needed a minimum of 8 feet from that tree? Was that just a decision of your own to set back 8 feet?
The existing tree is bounded on the lower side, on the east side, by some pre-existing rockery walls. So we know that the roots don't extend any further past that rockery wall. And as that wall moves north, it narrows. And if we were to be 18 inches further, closer to the home or closer to the tree, the roots, you know, there was about a width of 4 or 5 feet, 3 or 4 feet that the roots could occur in as that narrowed down. By moving 18 inches further away, there's only about 2 feet of width that a root could penetrate through. And, you know, as we get smaller and smaller, the chances of an existing root being in that area get smaller and smaller. So we were hoping to, you know, when we excavate, we'll find, we hope we don't find any roots, actually. Did I answer the question? It's hard for me to describe, but if this is the tree right here in the middle, as this rockery wall comes around and comes back into grade, if we put the garage here, there's 4 feet of width that a root could potentially be in. We move 18 inches further because of the rockery wall narrowing to the topography. There's only a couple of feet that a root could potentially be in. And we just felt that that was, yeah, you can see it there. If I had a pointer, is this a pointer? Ah. Got it. So if I point up here, do you see it up here? Or do you need to look up here? Okay. So if we could go back to that site plan that was up, right here. So the tree in question, yeah, there we go. Oh, I'm pushing the buttons? Yeah, okay. So the tree in question, oh, come on. I'm pushing the red button. I think batteries are in need. Oh, there. All right. You see the house, and just north of the house is a white area that's relatively level. The circle that is about halfway up represents the trunk of the tree location. And you can see that white area narrows as it moves north and then cuts off. So the closer we are with our foundation to the tree, the wider distance that there's an opportunity for a root to occur. As we move further north, as that flat area narrows, then the opportunity for roots to be interfering up in here is less than if we were down here closer to the tree. Yes?
Is there any chance you could bridge the foundation?
At great expense. The foundation for the connection is actually a bridge. And if we go to the development plan, correct. So you see here is the bridge that is, and that is a bridge so that the roots can occur underneath it. Bridging the up here, there's only a couple of feet that those roots could, you know, extend, because if we go to the other drawing, right about there is where the end of that flat area is. And it would be a great expense to bridge that 4 and 5 foot width as it narrows to nothing.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Smith, thank you. I have a couple questions. Just one real quick. What is the estimated age of this tree?
We heard 300 years.
Rockwood Tree Services, Beth Moxley indicated it was approximately 300 years old. She's also the one who pointed out that she believed it was habitat for bear.
Okay,
If the applicant's representative could repeat that on the microphone so we make sure we get on the public record, or at least if you could, please.
Introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. My name's Chuck Meyer, so I'm the owner of the property in question. At the time we purchased the property, we did have some work done on the trees, basically to ensure the health of the tree. So we had them inspected for their health. So what I'm providing here, I guess, is effectively hearsay. I didn't know I would ever need this in writing. The other piece of reason to do it was fire safety. So Beth Moxley of Rockwood, excuse me.
nervous I wasn't prepared to talk today, of what she called herself? Rockwood Tree Services. Came out and did the inspections. There's actually a rather large fir on the south side of the house as well. She found the trees to be in exceptionally healthy condition. That was her comment to me. She noted the growth of the new cones that always set out at the end of the limbs throughout the height of the tree. So she had very favorable prognosis for the health of both trees. She indicated that a bear used the tree to the north of the house as habitat, and she indicated that the tree to the north of the house was approximately 300 years old.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you. Well, with that being said, Mr. Smith, has there been an arborist consulted about the excavation around the base of this tree as far as buttress roots, watershed, lack thereof? Because there's going to be a dramatic change in how this tree that's 300 years old is going to be accumulating its water now, with the structure over part of it, excavation, cutting roots, and things of that nature. Do you have anything from a horticulturalist or an arborist? I don't mean a certified arborist, but a horticulturalist per se, that would give some sort of credible assurance that this much disturbance around a 300-year-old tree would not later result in problems for Mr. Meyer?
We do not.
Okay, that's basically all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no further
Thank you.
questions, thank you. We'll open it up to public comment. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment on this one?
Yes, we do. We have John Sell, followed by Kathy Brandhorst.
I'm John Sell from 390 Tuscarora. Preservation of the tree is a self-induced hardship, and I believe an unnecessary request. It's not an old-growth pine tree, as mentioned in the report. It's actually a white fir that's been marked by the TRPA to be removed as a potential hazard. The tree is codominant with multiple tops from prior damage. The permit to remove it expired in 2013. The owner mentioned to me she did not want to spend the money at the time. The house was sold to the present owners in 2015. The tree's been referred to as a heritage tree. It's not. Tree preservation is not governed by Washoe County. I've had two very similar trees on my property that have died and had to be removed. I understand the loss and expense, but this is not a special circumstance. Frankly, this tree is unlikely to survive that much longer for any reason, including the construction stress. The side setback of 3 feet 6 inches for the proposed building and the additional 14 inches beyond that due to the proposed north sloping roof eaves is simply too close to my property. It leaves no room or area designated for snow removal and storage, and the application states that the sliding stone will not damage my adjacent residency. That's just not a correct story. You can see from the pictures I provided that snow storage and removal is a significant issue for the area generally and specifically in this area. It will negatively affect me. Erosion from snow melt and rain are also an issue. I previously had to address the problem on my side of my property in 2004 with a series of rockery walls along the side of the house. In 2012, I gave permission to the prior owner of 380 to tie into my rockery wall. I'm very familiar with these rockery walls. She wanted construction to address erosion as well. That work was also done by the same contractor. The permits and pictures are in the materials I've provided. I have no intention of permitting any use of my property for construction, and I don't want these walls disturbed. I don't see an allowance for a construction zone, which I believe needs to be 12 feet. There's also not enough space with the proposed side setback for general maintenance and access, and again, I don't want access or disruption on my property. I don't see how the construction and maintenance of the project can be accomplished exclusively on the owner's property. I find it worth noting that the application is concerned with the construction road interference for the white fir that we've been discussing, but has no consideration for my trees, which include 2 sequoias next to the property line, and proposed construction being a very short distance away. The application also states the proposed design will have no impact on my privacy and views. That's clearly not true. I've discussed that in the written comments I've supplied. This is not the only alternative for the 380 property for building a garage. Far from it. Topological conditions on the property do not dictate or limit it be built as proposed. It creates problems and maximizes serious issues for me that are rather unnecessary. There are other alternatives for building a garage on this property and minimize or eliminate the issues I'm discussing here, and do not require a side setback variance. I would ask you to please look at the written comments I've supplied along with this testimony, and ask that you deny the variance request. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sell. Anyone have any questions?
Oh, may I mention, I'm quite aware of the bear incident. It was a one-time thing where the bear got up into the tree and tore off a branch.
Thank you. Madam Secretary?
Next, we have Kathy Brandhorst.
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I'm also the United States President. Well, you're not going to like my statements, but I'm just going to give it to you the way I feel. Possible action to approve a variance to the front and side yard setbacks. What are we talking about? Inches? Are we talking about lifting an entire house off the property? Well, to allow for the construction of a garage. You know what? You're going to add a garage to the property. You don't even have a permit to do that. All right, associated hallway connection. The house is already there. The house has already got whatever it has inside the house. You don't need a hallway inside the house, do you? The front yard setback would be reduced from 20 feet to 7 feet. Isn't that strange? You're gonna, what, make the house real small so you can't even fit into it? Or is that another piece on the property that you're going to remove with the entire house? Also, the side yard setback would be reduced from 5 feet to 3.5 feet. Oh my God, what are we talking about? Another tree? I don't think so, not on this property. We're not talking about trees, are we? We're talking about an entire house that's going to be removed off the property, and we're never going to see that house again because you don't have the permit to live there. You have no permit or contract to live there on the property at all. So you're going to have the house removed entirely off the property so nobody can live in the house. You don't even have a contract to live in the house. So that's the real reason, isn't it? To have the house removed off the property, and nobody will be living in it except for the person who has no contract, no way to live there at all except your poles and wires again.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone else?
We have no further public comment.
Can I readdress the board?
We'll get to you in just a second. Since we have no further public comment, we'll close the public comment period, and we will bring it back to the board for discussion, and if the board members have a question, we'll get to you, okay? Anybody, before we get into discussion, disclosures? No disclosures? Okay, cool. Discussion. Anyone have any salient points or questions for anybody else? Mr. Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have a question for Mr. Geisinger.
Mr. Geisinger?
I'm sorry, I missed that. I was talking to the...
That's all right, no problem.
What was the question?
Mr. Stanley.
Hi, Chad. The question that I had for clarity, did you stipulate that the tree itself wasn't a determinant, it was an ancillary item, an adjunct item, not germane or not strictly a determinant of your suggestion for the acceptance for the variance in this case?
I did respond to the question stating that in my professional opinion, I think it's an extenuating circumstance, but really that discretion is to the board as to what you feel is a special circumstance. The topography is certainly a special circumstance. That's pretty black and white. The county code, the base county code, does not have any tree preservation standards in it. So one could argue that removal of any tree anywhere in Washoe County is not a special circumstance. However, our code does encourage retention of trees greater than, I believe, 6 inches in caliper or something like that. I can't remember the exact language, but there's no requirement. So I guess it's a long way to say that if the board feels it's a special circumstance, then you could so determine. But from a staff perspective, it's something that I think should be considered, but probably doesn't rise to that level as far as state law.
Okay.
TRPA does have a tree ordinance, though, so.
Right.
Yeah.
If I may, just to try to concretize this a little bit for me, and perhaps for the other members, the variance and your recommendation that that be approved, and all of the consulting groups involved who made comments and so forth, was the tree part of that determination, or was it either way, a plus or a minus?
You mean in terms of the staff recommendation?
Yes.
I would say it was a consideration.
Okay.
Yes, along with the topography. I would say that about any site that had a tree that old, that big, from my own personal professional opinion.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley. Anyone else?
Well, I just have just a comment. Having extensive education and experience in plant science, I think, Mr. Meyer, you should reconsider this whole plan. This tree may do well in good water years, but in the periods where we have 3, 4, 5 years of drought, you may be very disappointed to see it being attacked by bark beetles and other pathogens and insect pests and whatnot, native to the Tahoe Basin. To disturb a tree of this age is going to put it under stress. It's going to stress this tree. And I wouldn't be surprised if in 4, 5, 6 years, after the next drought cycle, whatever, that you're not consulting with Ms. Moxley for the complete removal of that tree, which would be very expensive and time-consuming and unfortunate, of course. I think I applaud your efforts to keep that tree. I really do. I think it's noble. I think you're trying to do the right thing for your community from an aesthetic standpoint. But I think in the long run, you may be disappointed. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Ms. Hill? Did you have something?
It was on all the time. I went out and visited the site. I think it's a charming home, and I have no problem with the front yard setback, even for a garage. But I have to concur with my fellow board members, I think, and Mr. Sell, that the side yard setback is unwarranted for protection of that tree, because it was broken off at one time and has multiple branches growing up out of the top of it. I have a picture of it on my phone. It there's also a TRPA permit to remove it because of, could break and fall over. And during this winter, with the massive snow that we've had, there's been several trees around my house that have broken and fallen and have created a hazard. And I think it is basically, I would consider that a hazard tree, especially during a long, big snow year like this. And I think it would be a better design to have the garage closer to the house and not have to, I just not supporting the side yard setback, part of the variance. Front yard, fine, but not the side yard.
Can we withdraw the side
Just a moment, sir. I'll give you an opportunity, okay? Were you done?
Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Hill, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In addressing this issue, we, the board, are bound by the NRS 278-300, which addresses the issue of exceptional narrowness, shallowness,
shape of specific piece of property, exceptional topography, or extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions to that piece of property. I question whether a tree in and of itself fits that. However, the size of the tree, the age of the tree, and trying to keep natural resources, intact, I think is also important. However, Mr. Sell did supply us with some documentation, and one of them has to be the tree removal permit that was permitted in 2010. And that specifically does allow for or recommends the removal of that tree because of the insect and because it being a hazard. So I think we have a circumstance where the tree has been identified as a hazard or subject to insects and therefore could be removed. If the tree was removed, then we're not infringing basically onto the setback. So I have a real issue that I don't know if we have met the requirements basically under the NRS. It gives us the authority to grant an exception under this, and if it did, we still have an exception that the tree has already been slated to be removed once. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I need to just quickly echo my colleagues' statements, and also through education and 35 years of experience, white fir trees typically live about 160 to 200 years, and then they die even under the best of circumstances. So, I'm not doubting what you said, that the tree is 300 years old. I guess I am doubting that a little bit, but if it is in fact that old, it's very near the end of its life anyway. And I have to agree with my colleagues that to me, the tree does not represent a special circumstance. And it could be taken out, and we would not be talking about an issue with the side yard setback. So I will give you an opportunity to respond, and we'll do that right now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate the comments that we've gotten on the tree. I think we were unaware that there had been a permit issued prior for removal of it, and it had at one point been identified as a hazard. I was unaware of that. What we saw was a beautiful piece of nature, and the motivation to preserve it, I think, was came from the heart, came from the right spot. We certainly don't have a problem in eliminating the request for the side yard setback and moving the garage closer to bringing it into conformance on the side yard with the 5-foot setback, but maintaining the request for the front yard setback. If we can make that modification, I would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Giesinger, I believe that we can do that. We can accommodate that change here, can we not?
Yes, you may. We can amend the conditions of well, you can just amend the request and include that in your motion. So you certainly can do that.
Okay, so,
Mr. Chair?
yes, sir, Mr. Edwards.
All right, so this has happened in other cases, and really what it comes down to is notice was given that there's a possibility of the board doing A and B, and now the request is for the board to do only B, but not A. My view on this has been that since the board's being asked to do less than, but included within what was requested and what was noticed, that the board does probably have the power to do this. Now, for example, if somebody came in after an item was noticed as possible action to do A and B, and they came to the podium and said, and we want C, now you would be beyond the scope of what was on the table in the notice and the requested action, and that would not be okay. So my opinion is that it's probably all right for the board to do that. I will also note, the safest approach would be to bring the matter back with the revised request and the revised application. So it's up to the discretion of you and the board if you want to move forward as is with the adjusted request, or reduced request, I should say, or possibly move it to another meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Would a continuance satisfy that need to renotice this?
I think it would probably, I don't know off the top of my head on that, if you'd have to renotice. If it was continued, I'd have to talk with staff offline and see if a new notice would be necessary. My instinct is that it would not, because the notice was given duly for this meeting, so anybody that wanted to present on the topic would be here and would be getting notice of the new application request and the new meeting. But I would have to talk with staff about that, and that would be handled at a staff level after, if there were a continuance. I will say also that generally the rules require action by the board within a certain amount of time, barring a continuance. So if the preference were to move this to another meeting, you would need to get the consent of the applicant to do that. Or if you just acted today, then you would just act today.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. So bringing that back to the board real quick, my preference honestly would be to deal with this today and to move forward with a change and leave out the side yard setback and move forward with a motion to either approve or deny based on the information that's been presented to us today. Does the applicant have any desire to continue the meeting or to resubmit, or are you okay with moving forward with leaving out the side yard setback?
The applicant is fine with moving forward and relinquishing the request for side yard setback, and the applicant will take under advisement the sincere advice of considering removal of the tree.
Okay. Mr. Sell, let me give that some thought, okay? Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My only concern with moving forward of striking one and going forward with the other is when I look at the site plan has identified exactly where the locations will be. And if we approve one, we really don't know where the garage is going to sit after that. Is it going to abut against the house? Is there still going to be a walkway between the two? So I'm not quite clear exactly what we will have or what we will vote on if it's not in conjuncture with both of them.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas, and that makes complete sense to me. So at this point, my suggestion to the applicant is to ask for a continuance to our next meeting, which would be on April something. Let me look at my calendar real quick here. 6th? April 6th. So how does the applicant feel about that? Because we cannot tell you we're going to continue the meeting. You guys have to ask for that. So that's my suggestion.
Chairman, the intention on eliminating the side yard setback request is to simply move the garage 18 inches south and leave it abutting the setback line. And if that's public testimony that says that's what we're doing, I think that should be good enough in describing what the plan will look like.
And I understand that. I will tell you in my discussions with the board's inclination is not to move forward under those conditions at this meeting. Okay. So we would simply be, at this point in time, we would be considering approval as is, as presented to us, or denial as is presented to us. So
Yeah,
that's
like
why
a
I'm offering you the,
continuance.
so you would rather not continue?
No, have a continuance. I'm
Okay,
sorry. We are requesting a continuance.
Okay. All right, thank you. So, Mr. Edwards and Mr. Webb, little advice from here. The applicant is requesting a continuance to our April 6th meeting. And where do we go from here? We haven't done one of these in a while, so I just want to make sure I'm following the right steps.
waiting for the mic to spin up here. You've gone on the record as a continuance, and as the chair, you're allowed to do that. You've set the actual time of the meeting, which is the next Board of Adjustment meeting, which is April 6th. If not, it's that first Thursday in April. Yeah, I'm sure it's April 6th. So that's sufficient that you've gone on the record for that. Meanwhile, staff will discuss, as council noted, about noticing. And for this board, you can see it in April, whether it's noticed or not. So there you go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Webb. So just to be perfectly clear, we are going to continue at the applicant's request, variance number WPVAR 16-0001 to the meeting in April, which is either April 6th or the first Thursday in April, just to make sure we're safe that way. Thank you. Mr. Sell, I will reopen the public comment period very briefly for you to make another comment if you need to. If you don't need to and you can take care of it at the continuing meeting, that would be my preference. You'll wait? Okay, cool. Thank you. So that closes this one up. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, that meeting will also be at 1:30 PM. We've talked about the date, but the time is 1:30 PM and here as well, I believe, at the County Commission complex.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards, for that clarification. Appreciate that. All right, folks, thank you. That concludes this one. Let's move on right on to item 8C. Administrative permit case number WADMIN 16-0001, the Maze Building. And who's up on this one? Mr. Pelham.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. We'll give it just a moment here for the PowerPoint to come up. Can you hear me?
No.
Hello?
There you go. We're good now.
Just for everyone's edification in the audience, with the new sound system here, you have to have two things. One, the little red light needs to be on at the microphone, which it is. When you're speaking at the lectern, it's always on. The system self-adjusts, and so it will pick up a loudspeaker or a soft speaker and attempt to self-adjust. So if you come from someone that's a loudspeaker, it's going to muffle the sound. The next person comes up as a soft speaker. As you heard actually a couple of the public comments, it takes a moment for the system to figure that out and then kick in and increase the volume. So patience with the new system, but it is on.
So, Mr. Pelham, are you a soft speaker?
Not generally.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
But administrative permit case number WADMIN 16-0001 for Carlson Associates, also known as the Maze Building, is a relatively simple request, and I intend to make a relatively brief presentation. This is discussion of an administrative permit to allow a portion of the existing building to be converted from commercial offices into residential apartments. Okay, it worked a second ago. Donna, can you go forward for me, please? Thank you. This
All this
is,
new technology and we're stuck, huh?
clearly it has outstripped my capacity to use it. This is located on Maze in the Incline Village area, as can be seen on the vicinity map here. Next slide, please. This is a site plan showing the existing configuration of the building on the parcel itself with the surrounding parking. Next slide, please. The use is an allowed one. This is in the medium density urban zone, which is actually, generally speaking, a residential zone. The exterior of the building will remain more or less as it is. It is surrounded essentially by other residential uses. And so really this is a pretty simple one, and I think all of my comments and analysis can be summed up in, okay, meet code. Because this is a change, its current code will come into play for things like screening around it, lighting, landscaping, covered parking for those apartments. But really there's not a whole lot else there. Next slide, please. This was noticed to the surrounding property owners as shown on the public notice map here. Next slide, please. And again, the conditions are really minimal, and an approval would then require a set of building permits, and those building permits would be reviewed for compliance with all of the current applicable codes. Next slide, please. As far as the findings go, is the proposed use consistent? Yes. Apartments are allowed in the medium-density urban zone. Next slide, please. Improvements, the conversion from commercial offices to residential apartments will not create additional impacts. If anything, probably the overall impact would be a little less. Next slide, please. The site is suitable, again, because the building is already there, parking is already there, and again, upgrades will be made to meet current code. Next slide, please. Issuance not being detrimental, this was sent out to the appropriate reviewing agencies, and I got virtually no comment back from any of them. Next slide, please. And there is no military installation in the vicinity, so this one doesn't need to be, this finding does not need to be made. Next slide, please. So, without having much in the way of comments from anyone, I am recommending approval, subject to the conditions. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but, you know, come up and meet current code when the building permits are applied. And with that, I'm available for any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Pelham. Excuse me. Anyone have any questions for Roger? Seeing no questions, thanks, Roger.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, or does the applicant here and wish to speak? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Tim Carlson for the record. I'm the owner of the property, and we concur with staff, and we'll do everything appropriately assigned to us in regards to the permits and so forth, and do it according to code. I have no other further comments unless there's questions.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Seeing no questions, thank you. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment?
Yes, we do. Kathy Brandhorst. Thank you.
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I am the United States President. You know, the hearing, discussion, and possible action to approve an administrative permit. Permit? What are we talking about? Permit? Well, I'll let you know that this residential premises do not belong to the person who is trying to steal it. I'll tell you why. Because the apartment is a residential and it belongs to somebody, not to you. It says of a portion of the first floor of an existing commercial office building into 4 residential apartments. Well, this is already a residential apartment. What are we talking about? More money for your pockets? Is that why we are all here? The first floor of the building is 3,662 square feet in size, approximately 600 square feet. Wow, that looks like an apartment, doesn't it? A residential apartment, not commercial at all, is it? We're not talking about commercial. We're talking about somebody's home. And it belongs to this person who has this small apartment. It's being stolen from him, right? Right. We all know that this person has to fight now for his own place to get back, because we're talking evictions again. The poles and wires must be removed from the property, right? Right. Because you don't have gas, you don't have electric. Where's the lighting come from? Oh, well, Approximately 600 square feet is proposed to remain as a commercial office. There is no commercial office. You just stated it's residential. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to do? You trying to change it from commercial to residential? When it's already residential, it's already somebody owns it. You don't own it. You're just trying to steal this residential premises so you could move into it. You could say it's yours. It's not yours. Well, this 3,000 square feet is proposed to be converted into residential space. It's already residential. Why are you saying it's commercial when it's already residential?
Thank you. Madam Secretary, anyone else?
We have no further public comment.
Thank you. We'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Before we get into discussion, any disclosures? Seeing none, any discussion?
I think it's a great project. I like mixed-use projects with residential and commercial right in the heart of Incline Village. And I commend the owner for taking upon himself to provide additional housing in Incline.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Thomas.
First of all, I must apologize. If I can ask the applicant a question?
Absolutely. Sir, if you could step up, please.
The question I have is, I believe that there's 7 garages.
Correct.
On this location. Are those going to be available for the tenants that move in?
According to code, they must be. I have to place a sign on and offer it to each one of the apartments, many of the apartment holders. I have one now that uses that uses that garage. So yes, to answer your question, there are 7 garages present. I'll need to have 3 additional garages or carports, which is what was stated before as far as code is concerned. And each one of those garages will be assigned to a unit.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no further discussion, the chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
Mr. Lawrence.
I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Board of Adjustment approve administrative permit case number WAD MIN 16-0001 for Carlson and Associates with the conditions of approval included as Exhibit A to this matter, having made all 4 required findings in accordance with Washoe County Code Section 110.808.25, those being 4 consistency, improvements, site suitability, and issuance not detrimental.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. A second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Thomas. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We're going to take a short 5-minute recess, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Roger can't figure out how to use it. This is forward, this is back.
Okay, forward, okay.
Okay, that's the beginning right there.
Okay.
They couldn't figure, there's not much space on here for pushing around, so.
This is the first time I've been down here since they've been
Oh,
old
yeah.
too, so.
And if you need the pointer, here's this.
Yeah, I don't know positive. If I have my staff report done tomorrow and all the action order done tomorrow and everything done tomorrow, I can submit it to the BCC agenda coordinator. And by pretty much, if I get everything in there, it should be on the 28th, but I won't get a verification until the 8th, next Wednesday.
Okay, so it's still gonna be that 8th thing before we really, really know.
Really positively know. But
Okay,
they would
'cause
have,
they
yeah,
had some things that they had scheduling issues too. They
Yeah.
wanted to kind of button down sooner rather than
yeah.
later.
I'm pretty sure it will be unless it gets rejected. Yeah, usually they don't reject it unless there's something really big taking up the meeting.
But, but once you give it to them, there's not gonna be getting any feedback between then and the 8th. It's just
No.
gonna be wait till the 8th.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It must be Roger. Okay.
It works.
Okay, I'm just gonna say like, this is a fellow now, minor housekeeping. Would it be wrong to call it a housekeeping issue?
What, this?
Yeah. Relatively minor.
Yeah, it's a, well, I'm gonna say, you know.
Minor clarification.
It's more of a clarification and, you know.
You can see right there, very faint.
She's come here just to get out of the cold, or?
This has been years of this.
Do you really have to?
Yes, by the way.
She's totally off deep end, right? I mean, she really doesn't know.
I know.
Here we go. Now it's working. Okay, the Board of Adjustment is back in session. We are on to item 8D, variance case VA 16-006, the EGET residence, and we have Ms. Kraus with us today.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Eva Kraus, planner, Washoe County Planning and Development Department. So we heard the EGET variance in October, and this is just a correction of the items that I misstated on the legal ad. So we're not going to go through the whole variance again. I do have that other slideshow if you want to go back and look at any of the old pictures. But basically so now we are talking about, they've already got the approval for the garage and the second story and the plumbing. And so this is just for an addition on the side of the cabin, and it's in the side yard setback, so they want to reduce it 8 feet to 5 feet for a first floor addition, and then bump the second floor out even with that first floor. And then the garage on the north end of the property, on the high end of the property, let's put it that way. The corner of the side, one portion of the garage encroaches into the side yard setback by a foot, and I did not notice that on the original public notice. So those are the three things we're talking about today. Okay, so the conditions of the lot haven't changed. It is an unusual shaped lot. It's a very narrow lot. It has 3 front yard setbacks, and that severely limits the buildable area of this property. And this is not a tear down rebuild or a major overhaul. It's a matter of modifying the small cabin a little bit to make it a little bit more livable. There we go. So in 1999, they actually had a variance to reduce the side yard 5 feet to 5 feet so they could put a standard size bathroom on it. The cabin only had this little bitty bathroom. That's a picture of it there. And I equate it to something you would find on an airline. It's really small and cozy, let's put it that way. So they did in 1999 add a standard size bathroom. So what standard size means is 8'11" by 6'6" on the outside walls. So, approximately an 8x6 bathroom. It's still, that one's even pretty small. The second bathroom that they want to add would be about the same size. But then they would take out this little tiny bathroom and actually have a little more room in the kitchen, which would be nice. Oops, got my buttons backwards. Okay, this is the existing elevation on the right side, and you can see that little bump out on the side of the house. That was the addition that they put on in 1999. They want to now put an addition on the first floor that would be even with that, and then extend the second floor out to be even with the first floor with the additions on it. Okay, in the garage, now here's a close-up of the garage. The highlighted area, the red lines are the front setback lines, and then the purple line on the side is the side yard setback, and that little tiny pink triangle is the area of the garage that's actually in the side yard setback. Basically, by code, the side yard setback starts at the rear of the front yard setback. So I was trying to figure out how to word this, and it really is confusing when you just say it. That's why I had to make a picture. Okay, so the conditions of approval are still the same. The substantial conformance, and there will be a hold harmless on the house as well as the garage, because the house is also in the front yard setbacks. The porch is already there in the front yard setback, but we want to record that, so if there's any damage on it. There's also a condition that if more than 50% of the cabin is torn down for remodel, they can't then go back and say, well, we're going to build this new house on top of the old footprint. That would have to look at the existing setbacks on it. What we're trying to do here is prevent them from using this variance to build a big house later in the future. And then the other conditions are mostly for the garage, the deed restriction and the limited accessory structure footprint. So that's already been approved. And the findings are the same. The lot is exceptionally odd shaped, and it's odd size and steep slopes. There is no detriment once we have all the conditions of approval met. That's what those are there for, to mitigate any potential detriment. There's no special privileges. There have been so many variances granted up in this area. This is very similar to a lot of other properties, and it does fit the neighborhood and the conditions for what's up there. And of course, all the uses proposed on this property are allowed in the medium-density suburban area. So, I guess that's it. I thought I had another slide. No, I should have I thought I had a motion slide on there. Wait, no, I'm stuck. I think that there is a motion. Oops, oh. Yeah, there's a motion. So, the motion this time, I'm going to let you look at it on the slide, is basically we're approving the variance for the side yard setback from 8 feet to 5 feet for the first floor addition on the main house, to expand the second floor to be in line with the existing and proposed additions, and to reduce the side yard setback from 8 feet to 7 feet. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Krause. Anyone have any questions? Seeing no questions, is the applicant here, and do they wish to speak?
James Borelli, Architecture, here for the applicant, and since the relatively
If you need to step up to the mic, sir.
Afternoon, James Borelli, Architecture. I'm here for the applicant, and since it's a relatively simple clarification to our previous approval, I think Eve has already covered it quite well, so I'm available for any questions should you have them.
Thank you, sir. That being said, do we have any public comment, Madam Secretary?
Yes, we have Jeff Eggett.
I'm the owner and.
Could you identify yourself, sir?
I'm sorry. I'm Jeff Eggett, owner of 45 East Tuscarora, and Mr. Borelli can answer everything, and if he can't, I'm more than happy to answer any other questions that he can't answer.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment, Madam Secretary?
Yes, Pete Todoroff.
My name is Pete Todoroff. I'm chairman of the CAB in Incline Village, Crystal Bay, and I also agree that this is a very unusual situation on this, and I hope and pray that you guys approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we definitely appreciate the time that you put in to hear these things. Thank you. Anyone else, Madam Secretary?
We have no further requests.
Great, thank you. We will close the public comment period, bring it back to the board. Do we have any disclosures? Discussion. Seeing no discussion, the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Ms. Hill.
I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustments approved the variance case number VA 16-006 for Jeffrey Eggett with the conditions of approval included as Exhibit A for this matter, having made all four findings in accordance with the Washoe County Code Section 110.804.25, including special circumstances, no detriment, no special privileges, and use authorized.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 8E, variance case number WPVAR 16-002, Sierra RV Supercenter, and we have Ms. Kraus with us again.
Okay, again, Eva Krause, planner, Washoe County Planning and Development. Don't you love those new case numbers we get? This is a variance to, for a RV park, an outdoor, storage of outdoor vehicles without a commercial building on the property.
They're also wanting to approve, they had already installed a 8-foot fence around the property, and by code, it's only allowed to be 6 feet along the street, so they are asking for a variance to approve the existing 8-foot fence. They want to reduce the landscaping requirement, eliminate all lighting requirements, and to reduce the amount and area of the landscaping, or I'm sorry, of the paving material. Okay. Reduce the area of what's going to be paved, and use an all-weather base material on the parking lot instead of concrete or asphalt. So anyhow, this is on Old 395 South. It's a 4-acre parcel. Okay, go actually here to one. And here is where it's located on 395. On the north side of the property is Trailers Plus. On the south side of the property is there are 2 single-family houses and some pasture land. And then to the south of that one is Steamboat Trailers, or that's what it was. I think the name's changed, but that was what it was on the assessor's record, so I just used that name. So it's located between 2 trailer sales and service areas. What the applicant's proposing to do is use this property only for the storage of RVs and, I said, added accoutrements, or let's see what, yeah, and related apparatus, which I mean by that, and I say in the staff report, is things like toy haulers, car dollies, other things that they would be selling at their sales lot as RV sales, but not lumber or anything else. So anyhow, back up. So this is the site plan that they're proposing. The rear half of the property is in a sensitive stream zone. They're not proposing to develop any of that. The front half of the property along the highway is lower than the highway by about 6 feet. So if you put landscaping along the front of the property, nobody's going to see any of it, except for the trees. They are proposing to still put in the street trees. I haven't got my arrows down yet. Okay, like I said, the rear of the property is in the sensitive stream zone, but the whole property is in the 100-year floodplain. I was working at REOC during the storm, so I didn't get a chance to drive down there and take pictures of it. I'm suspecting it was underwater. So like I said, the site is several feet lower than the road. Their request to eliminate lighting is consistent with dark sky standards, which is requested or desired in this area. The Steamboat Creek in the rear has a lot of riparian vegetation lining the stream, so they don't want to disturb that, but they don't want to add more landscaping in that area. So send it out to a lot of different agencies. The 3 agencies that responded, of course, were planning and development. The conditions that we're looking at for conditions of approval, including we're limiting the use just to outdoor storage of vehicles, operable vehicles for RVs and related apparatus only. The operational conditions include that they're not going to have any sales off this lot. They're not going to have any employees on this lot. It's not going to be used for storing other things. And with their requests for landscaping, the one thing I did require is that they do some landscaping between the RV lot and the residential properties to the south for screening purposes. Charkley Meadows Fire Department had no problem with it. They do want defensible space, water for fire suppression, and a safe and access that meets their fire codes. So, and base material will meet their fire codes. Nevada Department of Transportation stated that the access to that site is privately owned. Once it transferred, they need to get a new encroachment permit for their use, and that they can't put signs in the right-of-way. I actually put conditions on here that they aren't going to have any signs on that lot except for the basic security, address, and things that are legal as not requiring a permit. So there's not going to be a big CRRV sign on this property. Oops. Okay, the Citizen Advisory Board, their questions, well, the first thing they asked me is, isn't this located between two trailer sales yards? And I'm like, yes, it is. I also explained that the conditions of our approval are just for the recreational vehicles storage and the related apparatus. If somebody else wants to come in and use this for some other sort of commercial storage or another commercial use, this permit would either have to be amended, or they would have to bring it up to regular development code standards for commercial use, meaning putting a building on and everything else. The CAB did recommend approval unanimously. Okay, and then, so we're gonna go into special circumstances. It is in the 100-year floodplain. The elevation change between the roadway and the property line means that even though the fence is 8 feet, it's not gonna be 8 feet above the roadway. It's gonna be about 2 to 3 feet above the roadway. And so it really is not, it isn't as effective as an 8-foot fence would be. So I'm recommending that they be allowed to keep what they have. The conditions of approval are to mitigate any potential detriment, so we find that there is no detriment. There is screening abutting the residential use, and the actual proposal will only be using the front half of the lot, so, and we're not paving it, which would end up making more stormwater runoff into Steamboat Creek, so it's actually better for the development site if we don't pave the whole thing. No special privileges. Obviously, we have the same uses on the north and south of it, and it is consistent with the no landscaping, no lighting, and everything is consistent with the rural character of the South Valley's area plan. And the use is an allowed use per the South Valley's area plan on this property. Oops. And as I said, I did add, while they said they're using an all-weather base, in past practices, I've talked with engineering, they want at least a 6-inch all-weather base material. Again, there's no parking or storage outside of the fenced area, no signs, landscaping buffer on the south, and water for fire suppression will be required, as well as the NDOT permit. So therefore, I am recommending approval, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And there is a representative too here for it.
Thank you, Ms. Kraus. Anyone have any questions for Ms. Kraus? Yes, sir, Mr. Thomas.
Real quick, the 8-foot fence faces the street, and then what, the other fences will be 6 foot? Is
No,
that correct?
it's 8 feet all around. Under code, a commercial property can have an 8-foot fence except for along the street.
Okay.
So it's gonna be 8 feet all around instead of 6 feet on the street side.
And that's an electric fence, that's correct?
It is an electric fence, so of course, one of the signs will have to say that. That's the type of sign I'm saying they can have, you know. This is an electric fence, don't touch whatever they put up on those things.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Is the applicant here and wish to speak?
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Rambo. I'm with Rubicon Design Group, representing Sierra RV. Eva did a really good job of covering the issues for you, so I will just be available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions of the applicant? Yes, sir, Mr. Thomas.
I just find it amusing that you have an 8-foot electrical fence basically to secure your property, but you don't want any lights there that would shine onto the property. You would think that light would deter any possible criminal activity after the hours of darkness. But then again, I also understand that, you know, the dark sky is important to everybody out there also.
Right, it's also in consideration of the neighboring houses to keep the light down so that they can still enjoy their property.
Anyone else? Seeing no further questions from the board, we will open up public comment. Madam Secretary.
We have Kathy Brandhorst.
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I'm also the United States President. you know, I have a storage and I hope it's, you know, secure where nobody can steal my things out of my storage. I pay for a storage unit, and I also have insurance on that storage too, so that it could be very secure. But it's not true. They break in, they can, put a great big hole in it, and guess what? They're inside already into my storage and breaking and entering. Yes, breaking and entering and steal whatever they need out of that storage. Well, it looks like that's exactly what's going on here with this storage. Somebody has to break into this storage to steal whatever they need out of that storage. Well, I'll tell you, it says a high fence adjoining a street instead of a standard height of 6 feet. Oh my God. Well, you know, they're going to steal it no matter what. They could release the electric wire. Yes, we can. And we could still steal it, right? We could use it. But that's not the way we really want it, is it? But I just wanted to tell you, you know, stealing somebody else's property out of the storage is illegal.
We have no further requests.
Thank you. We'll close public comment, bring it back to the board. Any disclosures before we discuss? No disclosures, discussion. Yes, Mr. Stanley.
Mr. Chair, I personally like the project, and I think it's a great example of turning a potential code issue into a thoughtful and productive asset.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no further discussion by the board, the chair will entertain a motion. Yes, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and the information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustment approve variance case number WPVAR 16-0002 for Sierra RV Supercenter, Inc., with the conditions of approval included as Exhibit A for this matter, having made all 4 findings in accordance with the Washoe County Development Code, Section 110.804.25, that being number 1, special circumstances, 2, no detriment, 3, no special privileges, and 4, use authorized.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Second. Mr. Stanley seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving right on to item 8F, variance case number WPVAR 16-0003, Snyder Residence, and the lovely Ms. Kraus is with us again.
Again, thank you, and good evening, well, good afternoon or whatever still. Eva Kraus, planner, Washoe County Planning and Development. This is a request to reduce the setback from 15 feet to 1.7 feet from the edge of the road to construct a garage. It's on Ganawabi. I know Ms. Hills is familiar with it. If you haven't been up there, it's a very interesting street to drive down. It's an old street, old subdivision, and it has its challenges. So anyhow, the applicant wants to build a garage. He has a house, an old house, and it does not have a garage on it. So they are proposing to build a new garage, and because of the slope of the hill, it drops off steeply from the edge of the road down the hill, so they want to move the garage close to the road to be able to get access into the garage. And the corner of the garage, oops, I'm pushing the wrong buttons, I'm not used to this guy yet, is 1.7 feet, is proposed to be 1.7 feet from the edge of the road travelway. Now, right now, their only parking area is on the uphill side of the road. They've actually dug it out and, I don't know if they did or the previous owner or somebody has, widened it there and created a parking area on the side of the road. So anyhow, this is the site plan. On the left-hand side, at the top of the lot is State Route 20, or is, yeah, State Route 28. Yep. And on the right-hand side is Lake Tahoe. They actually own all the way from the highway down to the lake, and the road goes right through the middle of their lot. Like I said, this is an old subdivision. They didn't create a right-of-way or an easement or anything when they created it, but that's where the road is. And so we did notify 33 separate property owners in this area, and I have received one letter of support from the neighbor, let's see, Stephen Kroll, who lives at 550 Ganawabi. He says he's to the north of, or the next property over to them, north of this property. He's a neighbor. And he is in support. Again, there was no CAB meetings between November and February, so of course this did not go to a CAB meeting. The application was sent to the CAB members. I did not receive any comments from anybody. Of all the agencies that reviewed it, only planning and engineering had comments or conditions. And basically, land development had asked for standard conditions, garage door opener, and a hold harmless. Traffic was a little more concerned. They asked that it be changed from 1.5 to 7-foot variance. And so because of that recommendation, that is what I was recommending you approve. The standard plan, so anyhow, conditions of approval for this, I'm sorry, I'm rushing through this. It is a steep lot, very steep, very hard to build on. And that basically is the hardship on this property, is the slope of the lot and how it was developed. You only have this one little road to get to it. And like I said, the road goes right through the middle of these people's property, and they wish to put a garage on next to that. And in, I think it was 2002, because the code said you had to set back from a right-of-way if it was county, or set back from the right-of-way or an easement. And since there wasn't an easement in here, we actually changed the code to say, or a road maintained by the county. This is maintained by the county. We do plow it. We do the road maintenance on it. That's why this is coming to you for a variance. In the past, because that code didn't say you had to set back from the road, or the pavement, it just said you had to maintain, or set back from a right-of-way or an easement. The neighbor people have built right up to the edge of the road, so this is an unusual, this is the first time I've had a variance on this type of, for this property, or for this portion of the road that isn't in a right-of-way or an access easement. So it is kind of a new review. So anyhow, like I said, the conditions of approval, staff is recommending that, based on engineering's recommendation, that there be a 7-foot separation from the edge of the pavement to the structure versus a 1.7-foot. But otherwise, other standard planning requirements, you get 2 years to build it, you have to be in substantial conformance to the plans of what's approved, are all being recommended. The one odd thing I am recommending is a parking management plan for during construction. Ganawabi, being the way it is a very hard road to find parking space on, and when these builders and contractors start working on these houses, it's like threading a needle trying to drive through there, because all their construction worker trucks are all parked along the side of the road, and it interferes with traffic. So I want them to provide a parking management plan where they're not parking on Ganawabi, they're parking someplace else and either walking down or transporting their employees. And again, there's a condition for a hold harmless agreement to protect the county from any damage that might be done by snowplows or other road operations. And a garage door opener is required so people don't have to stop in the street, open the garage and go in. Now, I know it's very common, almost everybody has one nowadays, but we do want to make sure that is a condition. So, the findings are there is special circumstances based on the slope of the site and the fact that the road crosses their property, and like I said, it's on their land. The detriment, the conditions of approval mitigate the detriments. No special privileges. A lot of the properties in this area have variances and setback reductions based on the fact that it is a very steep hilly area and hard to build in. And the proposed garage is an allowed use in MDS. So, staff is recommending approval. We modified it to be a 7-foot approval. And if you have any questions, I'm here to discuss it, and I do know the applicant wants to discuss that too.
Thank you, Ms. Kraus. Anyone have any questions for Ms. Kraus? Seeing no questions for Ms. Kraus, does the applicant wish to speak?
Hello, I'm Elise Fett. I'm the architect engineer, and I live on Ganawabi as well. Could I have an overhead projector, please? So, unfortunately, because of the storms that were going on while Eva was trying to prepare the report, she wasn't able to do a site visit. I have taken several pictures that I'd like to run through for you to, just take a peek at. This is. I don't think I can see what you're looking at exactly.
Is it 1 or 2 car garage? I think it's 1 with a path. I think.
In the meantime, so Ganawabi Road, as Eva said, has a history of a unique, narrow, tight, steep development, and the 0-foot to 2-foot setbacks for detached garages and new homes has been fairly common. And so I decided to go through and take a look at this in detail, and I'll show you some pictures first, and then I'll show you the aerials that show all of the garages that are within a 0 to 2-foot setback on the road. And of course, the purpose of that is to show that this family is not asking for a special privilege. And the total, here it is. So this is the property there, and you can see that the easement legal road stops at their property. There is no easement or right-of-way through their property. There is a utility easement, and the request that we're asking for is 2.5 feet from the utility easement. It is 1.74 feet that we're proposing from the edge of pavement. So the 1.5 was just to be safe, because the edge of pavement is, of course, varying a bit here and there, and there isn't a legal easement to go from. But this is a few of the pictures going down Ganawabi. That's at the entrance as you're coming down. This one is.
If you could look up there, if you move it just a bit to your right, the camera's off focus a little bit, so there you go.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a 0-foot setback. This one is a, let me look at that. I think that one is actually in the right-of-way. I have my notes here. But if I try and go through this in detail, it's going to take a long time. Yeah, 355 is actually right on the property line. This one right here. This is up on Anaho, which is, just a little finger off of Ganawabi. It's actually right on the whole house it doesn't have a garage.
You're going to have to move that one up.
Sorry. There it is. It's right on the edge of the road, the house is. It doesn't have a garage right now. this is showing this road right, this home here and this home, those are actually right at the property line, at the right-of-way line, both of those garages on each side. And then the next garage is a variance of a new home, and that one was right on 1 foot setback, right there. This is, the next one's down. This is a 1 foot setback. That's a 1 foot setback. Not sure if you can see that or not. This is also a, let me see, 449 is a 1 foot setback. And this is 450, 458. And those are, it looks like they're right around, it's hard to tell. From the map, it appears that they're about a 2 foot setback, but they could be, the one that is 455, the one that's further down, this one right down here is a little bit more than a 2 foot setback. 559 is actually in the right of way. The road wraps around it. Unfortunately, with all the snow in place, you can't see the real edge of pavement. If you look at these aerials, which I can run through quickly, you can see how this was actually in the right of way, and many of these older ones are. This is 490, and that one is a 0 foot setback. This one is a 1 foot setback. That's at 485. 510. Let's see, 510. Is about 2 feet, and from the edge of pavement, and this is 540. So this is one where the right-of-way is here, and it goes way up the side of the mountain, way up here. So that garage that's back there is actually a 0 foot setback, but the right-of-way was in the wrong place. The actual road path is from this line, this direction, even though the right-of-way is there. But this one had a 7 foot setback. This is a that's a 0 foot setback. It's so reflective, you can't see it. That one is a 0 foot setback. That's the Vandenbergs at 520.
Okay, I think we kind of get what you're trying to say here, but.
The neighbors is an edge of pavement.
So my question to you is, are you not happy with the 7 foot setback and you want a 1.7 foot setback? Is that what you're, okay, so we have an issue because what is on the variance request is 7 feet. So we cannot address and change that to more than what's on this application.
That's not the variance request. That was the variance recommendation by Eva. That's
Okay.
not the variance request.
Ms. Kraus, can you clarify that for me? I want to make sure that we're on the same page here.
Elise is correct. The variance project summary is to reduce the 15-foot setback on a county-maintained roadway to 1.7 feet for the construction of the garage. The modified approval, or what we are recommending to approval, is to change that from 1.7 to 7 feet. So it was advertised at 1.7 feet, so that is how, that is what they requested. It was just not recommended to be that way.
Okay, so what was the noticing for this?
That was
Was it
for
7 feet or 1.7?
1.74, actually, notice. I have the public notice here if you want to look at it. It's the same thing that's in the subject line on your staff report.
Okay. Ms. Hill, you had a question also.
So I'm kind of confused too. It seems like, you know, you recommend that we modify the condition to 15 feet, from 15 feet to 7 feet setback, but the applicant wants 1.7 feet.
That is
Setback.
correct. Based
Okay,
on what
so-
engineering's recommendation was,
Right.
we are willing to give them a variance, but not to 1.7 feet per engineering's recommendation. That's still, you know,
So would we deny the approval for 1.7 feet and approve an approval for 7 feet?
Mr. Chair, you could just, if the board's intent were to approve staff's recommendation, you could simply do a motion to approve the variance to 7 feet. You don't need to deny the 1.74 and
But
then
at
do a
least
separate one.
is not, you don't want that, right? So would you rather have us deny it and you could go to the board, county commissioners and get it approved?
No, I'd like for you to listen through the presentation that I just spent all day yesterday preparing.
No, I know, I've gone to Garnawambi, I went and looked at this
Mhm.
house, I know what you mean about the setback.
Mhm.
But I don't know if we can approve it. If the engineer is recommending, I don't know, I'm just haven't had a circumstance where staff is offering something else, but the applicant doesn't want it.
Well,
Can I
but-
point out that the engineer, from what I understand, hasn't visited the site? The engineer also disregarded that this isn't a county road. It doesn't have an easement, it's a
Right.
private property.
Right.
And
Okay, so-
nothing on this road meets ASHTO standards in
If I-
any
if
way,
I
shape, or
might,
form.
Okay, just 1 second.
If I would
Mr.
suggest-
Webb.
What I was going to suggest is, when the applicant got interrupted, she had about 6 minutes left. I would offer that perhaps the best thing at this point is to have her finish her presentation and then have questions of the applicant to allow this dialogue with questions of the applicant to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Webb, and that's fine. We can continue, and understandably that you have 6 minutes left. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that I think you're kind of repeating yourself, okay? I think we kind of got that there's a lot of other properties that violate or are within
Okay.
the right-of-way or
I
the
won't
easement.
bother showing the aerials, where I've summarized where everything is. I'll show you the summary
Okay.
in a cleaner form.
Okay.
Which is, here's
And
an assessor's map,
Okay, let's move forward. Thank you.
and everything that is in green, those are the homes that do have a 2-foot or less setback on the road. Everything that's in green there. The ones in blue are the ones that are developed and are somewhere between 2 and 7 foot. These 2 blue ones are the only ones on the street that are developed with a garage that are more than 7 foot, which is what's being requested. Therefore, I just don't see this as being a special privilege that they are asking for. And the 2 homes, one of them has a 2-story, above the road, and that's why it was required to be set back further. This is the garage site plan. You can see the parking area that's going around here. The side, the corner that we're requesting the setback in is just here. It's going to be at an angle, therefore it's easier visually to see through. The center line of the garage is 6 feet from the edge of pavement, and it's over 7 feet from the utility easement. And you can see where the existing house is here. That's a 1-hour wall requirement that we're going to have to do for the corner of the garage as it is now. And if we were forced to do 7 feet with the existing house here, this is an old cabin. We don't have a 1-hour wall, and we have to have 2 feet for the eave, a distance of 2 feet for the roof eave from the imaginary property line to the house and to the new garage. And so we've done everything we can to squish this as close as we can over here. You can see 32 feet. This is unusually wide for Ganawabi. This is where they were going to have guest parking, and we don't have any problem with the management plan requested by Eva. There is obviously more room here to get around a corner of garage than anywhere else on Ganawabi where they are this close or closer. This is a picture of the steepness that we're dealing with. It actually drops 15 feet from the edge of pavement down to the patio that is going under the proposed garage. So it's a 15-foot drop in about 15 feet. I think that's pretty much my point. Clara is recommending meeting national standards, but this is not a legal road or an easement, and none of Ganawabi meets those standards. The snow storage is easily accommodated. It's going to go where the existing access stair is. That's what this is right here. That's where you access the house right now, but those stairs are not going to go away. So Eva based her decision off of Clara's recommendation, and I feel that that is probably not appropriate for Ganawabi.
Okay. Anyone have any questions?
I'd like to see the map that you had, if you don't mind.
No
The
problem.
map that you showed just recently, your second to last. The color map. If you could bring it here for review. I find this very helpful. Okay. Yeah, this is a little better than I was able to look at, so. My concern was this here. It was the 1.74. 11 feet here, 6 feet, narrowing down in a pie shape.
And of course, the path of travel is this direction, so it's angled so the edge of
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
What
Mr.
we're gonna need to do, if you wanna hover over the map, is gonna have to have copies of it made so that it doesn't essentially get removed from the public's view.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Mr. Webb, can we have some copies made of this real quick?
Elise, I just have one other question while we're waiting for this, and it's just a question out of curiosity here. I just wanted to get your opinion on the snow removal efforts up there. Of course, this year is a good test for that. These properties that are set so close to the road, what kind of challenges has that made for those in the county removing snow up there?
So I had a gentleman who came to my door, snow removal, and because there was a car that was parked across the street from my house, and it was a car that was there for construction of a house that was 2 lots down. And so we've asked those people to find other parking, and they have. And there has not been any concern that we have seen. They had to stop when they had the avalanche issue. They were concerned with avalanche, so they stopped all the plowing in Crystal Bay only because of the fear of the large avalanche.
Okay, one other question I think that I have is, as far as the removal, how do they do that? Plow it out of the way or blow it? How does the snow,
They're plowing it. But there is, as I marked on here, there is a lot of Nevada and federal Forest Service, Nevada state land and federal Forest Service land. And so they angle the plow to those properties, and that's how they remove it, is it goes to those properties that are not inhabited. They're very polite and they're very, very thoughtful.
They must be. Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions? Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was this a 1-car or a 2-car garage?
It's a 2-car garage.
It's a 2-car garage. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Hill.
Elise, what if it was 7 feet? What kind of hardship would that require of you?
They would not be able to fit the 2-car garage in without doing a side setback to 0 foot, and even then, it would be narrower than the 20, I think it's 23 feet that we're asking for, and then it has a covered walk that we've actually stepped back to make this work with the corner of the house. We had to pull that covered walk back. I also have some pictures that show, we did stake the proposed garage if you want to see it in place in the picture.
Well, I did drive down the street a couple days ago, and I was threading the needle between some working cars. But that's the way it is on Ganawabi. Everybody is right on the road, just like that previous variance we looked at today. I think it was Meyer, where there's the road and there's the house right on the road. And it's kind of standard operating procedure. And the fact that this is such an older cabin, this cabin is how old? I mean,
Oh, gosh, I don't know.
60-plus years old. And it's adorable. It's the last, all the houses on Ganawabi, of course, they're worth millions, so they're all new and fancy, modern garages. But, here's an old cabin that just wants a garage. I think it should have one. Because parking in this parking pad would be a disaster. I mean, it can't happen.
Anyone else have any other questions? Yes, Mr. Stanley.
Yeah, actually, I have a question for Planner Kraus when it's that time. Hi.
Yes, hi.
So it sounds like a lot of your decision and your recommendation was based on the engineering study?
It is, it's not an engineering study, but
The engineering
the
department.
engineering department made a recommendation. And that's the only reason I made a change from the request to what they were recommending, because the engineering. And it's true, we have granted a lot of variances in this area. Like I said, the issue here is that we don't have a right-of-way to measure from or a easement to measure from. And so it's kind of hard to say, you're right up against the road. A lot of times, some of the garages are older, a lot of them have got variances. The relationship between where the property line is and where the road itself is may be right on it, or it might be a little bit farther back, so there could be some separation. It's kind of hard to tell when you have much snow on the road. The one thing that Ms. Fett showed you is that this property does have a wider area next to the road for their own personal parking. And the property owner did call me and said, well, we've already volunteered that to the roads department for temporary snow storage, and that's what they do when they first clear the road, and then they come back and push it off. Our roads department has been very accommodating over the years to all the properties down on Ganawabi. It's a difficult road to plow.
So for the board, the actual engineering recommendation is Exhibit C to your staff report.
And follow-up question, was the applicant involved in those discussions in some way, or aware that these would be the constraints that you would recommend toward?
No, not until towards the end when I was finishing off the staff report, because I didn't have those comments right away, and it takes time to get some of these things through.
Right, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you clarify what the actual hardship is for these, for this request? What is this predicated upon? Is it the hardship that they don't have a garage, and that's what?
There's several. The hardship is, there's an existing house we're trying to work with. It's an extremely steep drop-off. They actually created those retaining walls. The edge of pavement was corroding away, and they built those retaining walls because the county didn't come in and build anything, and there was drainage that was coming from NDOT coming down, dropping through their property, creating a canyon, and it created a canyon and took out the edge of pavement there. So they built the retaining walls that I showed you in that picture and got the edge of pavement back again. So it's extremely steep. There's an existing house, and we have a road that is narrow, and yet, you know, we have to work with that. It's just, it is what it is.
It's not conducive to off-site parking.
Yeah.
There is parking right there.
Anyone else?
I have one question. Was,
Mr. Lawrence.
for Ms. Kraus, I didn't notice anything here on the CAB. Was there anything from the Citizens Advisory Board regarding this project?
No, as I stated earlier, we sent the application to the CAB members. There are no meetings between
That's right.
whatever, September and February or whatever.
Thank you for clarifying that.
And, you know, we've done a bunch of these over my years on the board, on Ganawabi as well as on other roads. I've never seen one in my experience with a request for 1.7 feet. And I have to tell you that just because everybody else does it, doesn't mean that we have to do it here. And I really have difficulty with granting 1.7 feet when we have statements in the staff report that it would create a safety hazard and would be a significant detriment to the public good. So I really have difficulty going anywhere beyond the 7 feet that Ms. Kraus recommends. So, is there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing no further questions for the applicant, we will open up public comment. Do we have any public comment, Madam Secretary?
We do not have any public comment.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Any disclosures?
Mr. Chair, if I
Mr.
might,
Webb.
as you begin your discussion, the one that I might offer here is if you notice on the description, it's specific from edge of roadway pavement and also recorded public works easement. And the recommendation from staff talks about the edge of roadway pavement. So in your discussions, if you could be clear as to what that distance is rather than just 7 feet, 1.74, to make sure in the final motion, at least it's clear what that distance is from. Again, just to make sure that as you have your discussions and your motion, it's clear as to what is that distance from.
Okay, so the 7 feet, Ms. Kraus, could you come up and help us clarify that, please? So in the possible, or in the modified approval of conditions, it says 7 feet from the edge of the roadway pavement. Is that exactly what we're talking about here?
Let me double check here. 7-foot clear zone to be maintained between the edge of the travelway and any structure. So I'm defining the edge of the travelway as the edge of the pavement.
Okay, so we, for our purposes, and from what I'm reading, we are going to make that distance the 7 feet from the edge of the roadway pavement as written in the staff report.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Webb. Okay, back to the board for discussion. Any disclosures? Seeing no disclosures, discussion. Any further discussion?
I would like to say something. I don't see how we can approve a setback of 7 feet when that's not what the applicant is asking. You know, then what is she gonna do? Have to come back? and then
Appeal.
Go to the Board of County Commissioners, appeal our approval of the 7-foot setback?
Well, that's an
Yeah,
even,
Mr.
that's
Chair.
an even better question. Mr. Edwards?
It's very similar to the issue that came up earlier. Since it is less than what the applicant is requesting and within the scope of the notice that was given for this item, you can approve staff's recommendation to 7 feet. You do not have to. You could also, if you find substantial evidence in the record to support it, approve what the applicant wants, which is the shorter variance in this case. You can do Either one, in my opinion, in this situation. The follow-up to that point is what you just raised, is what of the applicant then, if the applicant obtains an approval of a 7-foot variance, but not a 1.74 foot as requested. The applicant would be able to appeal that and ask the county commission to grant the full extent of the variance requested. So in a sense, from the applicant's perspective, it would be like a denial. But yes, so that, and I think that addresses both the points that you raised today.
Okay, so that brings us back to a possible motion.
Well, hold on.
Yes.
There's more discussion.
Yes, sir.
I'm having a bit of a time with this one. It's not as clear cut to me. As far as, there is a good portion of this triangle piece of pie that is within 7 feet or close to it. I look at the pictures that she had, and Christine, if you could help me, I mean, the vibe up there is so close to the road.
Yeah.
What is the issue having one more property closer to the road as in just being consistent with everything else that's been probably approved at some time before? Where are we so out of the consistency of that? If the people live there, they understand it, they drive through there every day, they understand they have the road snow issues, that they work with the county and removal. That was my big concern, was the snow issues up there. But it seems like even in this year, those were pretty clear roads and they seem to be dealing with that okay. I don't see this as more of a safety issue than any other property up there.
Right.
I really don't. And personally, I would support the 1.74 feet in this matter.
I would too.
That's all I have.
It's consistent with the neighborhood.
That's exactly what I am
and
saying.
It is practical, it doesn't require a side yard setback.
It's part of the vibe up
It's-
there.
Yeah.
People
it's
live with
an
that.
old cabin, they need a garage for off-site parking, because off-site parking is not feasible on a paved parking pad. It's just not in these kind of conditions.
So I would approve this as the applicant wishes at 1.74 feet. That's my position.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence and Ms. Hill. And you know what? I understand that, and I understand the vibe up there. What I have trouble with is we have a written statement in a staff report that says it's a significant detriment to public safety. And this may be putting Mr. Edwards on the spot, but let me ask you, Mr. Edwards, with a statement like that in the public record, and we approve it at 1.74 feet, and something happens, what is the county's liability?
Yeah, there's really no way for me to answer that, at this point, because any scenario where someone was trying to pin liability on the county would involve all kinds of facts that I don't have in front of me. Is it because the road washed out? Is it because snow got thrown somewhere it wasn't supposed to? Is it because there was a slide, a mudslide? Is it because of, there's a lot of different, is it a sinkhole? I mean, there's all kinds of things, and I would have to invent facts in my head to give a prospective opinion like that. I do think it is fair game for you as a board to take into account, as you are doing. I also think that the board has enough in the record to make a judgment call one way or the other, the 7 feet versus the 1.74 feet. The board doesn't need to agree unanimously, as you know. There could be some disagreement potentially amongst board members. But I do think that there's discretion for the board to go either way on this request in terms of what staff's recommending versus what the applicant wants.
So, Mr. Edwards, as is pretty standard with these applications up at the lake, we have the standard language asking for the encroachment permit and revocable encroachment permit and a hold harmless agreement by the DA's office. How much weight do those carry in a legal action?
Oh, they'd carry a lot of weight. And that would be with respect to this particular property owner and the county. So if some third party that wasn't privy to this situation wouldn't be bound in the same way that this property owner would. But let's say the property owner executes the hold harmless and there's some road maintenance work or there's snow removal and it throws ice onto, through a window or something like that, just making something up. That's the type of scenario where the hold harmless would come into play. And those are generally very effective in the law. When you go work out at the gym, you tend to sign one, and they mean what they say. So they are generally effective.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Edwards.
Yes.
Mr. Stanley, did you?
Yeah, just a comment. Obviously, this is, as we've all said, a difficult one with an awful lot of ramifications. I, for one, would have felt more comfortable if, on top of all of this, if we had some feedback from the cab, and it's too bad we missed an opportunity here with Mr. Todorov, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, here, that we didn't get some kind of or that not included in the package was a statement about, I think, what we're calling the vibe and what the people who live there now feel like about this sort of thing. So that's one of the other compounding issues that makes this even more problematic for me.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas.
And this is going to be a little out of order, but a question I have is the footprint of the garage, is that the exact same footprint of the patio that they want to remove? I'm sorry.
It's all right.
No, it is not.
So is it larger? The garage will be larger than the patio?
Yes, the garage is going over the existing retaining walls that are there right now, that are in the picture that I showed you, that there were stacks and stacks of retaining walls where it drops down 15 feet. And, we have a support of the adjacent neighbor to the north, and none of the other neighbors have made any comments that are negative.
I guess maybe help me out here, because according to the document I'm looking at, it says the property owner is proposing to remove an existing deck and build a garage at street level.
Uh-huh.
That's occurring. Is the garage going to be bigger than the deck that is being removed?
There is a deck that is down at the level of the house that goes through about half of what the proposed footprint of the garage is.
Okay, so the garage is basically going to be double the size as what the deck is right now. Is that right?
Yes, the garage,
Okay.
because we can't get any closer to the house with the garage without trying to make the existing cabin a 1-hour construction or cutting off roof line.
Okay. Bring it back?
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I guess a couple of my concerns are is when we use the term 1.75 feet from the roadway, that's 1 foot 9 inches. That's all. If you turn sideways to the road, you'd probably go shoulder to shoulder almost from the edge of the roadway to where the edge of the garage would be. To me, that's extremely narrow. Trying to get a full-size vehicle through there, trying to get a fire truck through there during an evacuation or something like that it isn't going to happen. There's going to be a problem. What I heard earlier, and this is me paraphrasing it, but the terminology of we've always done it this way or it's always been okay, if that is in fact true and correct, then we'd still be using typewriters and we'd be still making buggy whips. Times change, things change, although we have to take into consideration the way it was, but what does it mean in the future? I also tend to agree with the position you stated earlier that we have an engineer that basically said this is this is a public safety issue if you go too close to the road, and I give a lot of weight to an engineer making a statement to that degree. Those are just some of my issues that I'm weighing back and forth with. Thank you.
Anyone else? So the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Ms. Hill.
move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and the information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustments approve a variance case number WPVAR 16-0003 to reduce the setback from 15 feet to 1.7 feet from the edge of the roadway pavement for Patrick and Philomena Snyder, with the conditions of approval included as Exhibit A for this matter, having made all 4 findings in accordance with Washoe County Development Code section, special circumstances, no detriment, no special privileges, use authorized.
Okay, thank you. Before we hear a second, Ms. Kraus.
Could you add to that motion that you are striking condition 2A from the conditions of approval? That's the requirement for the 7-foot setback.
And remove condition 2A from the conditions of approval, requiring the 7-foot setback.
And prior to the second, what I heard was actually you said 1.7 feet from edge of pavement. Is that 1.7 feet or is that 1.74 feet?
1.74 feet.
Thank you.
Second?
A second?
Moved and seconded by Mr. Lawrence. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
Nay.
3 nays to 2 ayes. The motion is not approved.
If I might, for the record, the ayes were Hill and Lawrence, and the nays, I'm going to get this messed up, is Stanley Thomas and Toulouse, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Webb. So the chair will entertain another motion, if anyone would like to take a stab at it.
I'll give it a shot.
Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and the information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustment approve variance case number WPVAR 16-0003 to reduce the setback from 15 feet to 7 feet from the edge of the roadway pavement for Patricia and Philomena Snyder, with the conditions of approval included in Exhibit A for this matter, having made all 4 findings in accordance with the Washoe County Development Code section 110.804.25.
Let me stop you right there before you go further. That should be Patrick, not Patricia.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Patrick.
So make sure that's corrected in the motion.
Thank you. That being number 1, special circumstances; 2, no detriment; 3, no special privileges; and 4, use authorized.
Second? Seconded by Mr. Stanley, and all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
The in favors are Stanley, Thomas, and Toulouse, and opposed is Hill and Lawrence. Motion carries 3-2. Thank you very much. Moving on with our agenda, Ms. Hill.
Chairman, I'm going to excuse myself at this time.
Ms. Hill lives up at the lake and wants to try and beat the storm.
Yes.
Please, safe travels.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 9, chair and board items, future agenda items. Anyone have any future agenda items? Nope, we'll move right on. Requests and information for information from staff. Mr. Lawrence.
Yeah, I just have one comment. The maps were much better this time.
Yeah.
I have to say, we're doing really well there with the color and the maps, and staff should know that. Unfortunately, that last one, we needed that. I needed that. I could no way read that map that we had in that packet, so that helped me a lot. So 99%, great. There was just one issue there.
Yeah, it was brought in by the applicant.
Oh, okay,
so.
okay. So anyways.
Okay,
much
moving
better.
on, 10 item, directors and legal counsel's items. Mr. Webb, anything?
I have 2 broad items. The first one is a report on the actual 3 appeals from this board's decisions that were sent to the Board of County Commissioners. The first of those was Administrative Permit AP 16-008, which is the Sun Valley GID electronic message display board, if you remember. The board upheld the appeal and reversed the decision of this board. which allow the sign. The Board of County Commissioners further directed staff to bring a code amendment forward to allow exemptions to the electronic message display sign regulations for governmental entities when the exception is for public benefit. The initiation of that code amendment should be on the County Commission's agenda for the end of this month. And then after that, it actually runs a route through citizen review, planning commission, and back to the board. So it'll be 3 or 4 months before the Board of County Commissioners actually hears any proposed amendments based on that reversal of your decision. The second case was variance case number VA 16-005, Thomas Lipke. The board also upheld that appeal and reversed the decision of this board. The third one was the appeal of special use permit case number SB 16-010, which is the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District, station number 14. The board also upheld that appeal and reversed the decision of this board. Just to let you know the outcome of those. The second broad item I have is you probably wonder why I'm here and Mr. Whitney is in the audience. And Mr. Whitney would like to take the lectern and tell you why.
For the record, Bill Whitney, retired Director of Planning and Development. Good afternoon, everybody. And I am retired, and I wanted to come to your meeting today to just briefly say on the record how much it's been a pleasure to work with you over the years and watch you do your sometimes very tough, or make your sometimes very tough decisions. Looks like you earned your big bucks today as usual. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your public service and your continued public service. And personally, it's been a pleasure working with each and every one of you. And when we wrap the meeting up, I'll stick around to say goodbye to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitney, and I must say, I've now been through, I think, 3 directors, or it will be 3 soon, and I think that you did an absolutely outstanding job in your tenure. There were many very positive changes that occurred under your leadership. You've really developed your staff into an outstanding staff and hired some new folks who are absolutely excellent. And I think that is by far due to you and your leadership of the department. You will be sorely missed. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So thank you for your public service and dedication to Washoe County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything to say?
Go ahead,
This is my first time to work with you in this capacity. And I guess I wasn't at all surprised because we've been working, my family, my wife and I, both on cabs and Board of Adjustments for pushing 20 years, I think. When we first got together, when you were trying to work out something between you and the city on the Southeast Truckee Meadows little piece of the plan.
Seems like just yesterday, though.
Hair color aside, yes, I think so. And so it was always extraordinary work, always thoughtful, always beneficial to the community. It was always community first, which is easier to say than to do. And so I underscore and certainly agree with what's been said earlier, that you're going to be very sorely missed, and your follow-on person will have a real big hole to fill.
Thank you.
Just real quick, Bill, I remember my second meeting. I was sitting over there, you were over there, and we were talking, I think it was that water fire thing or that basketball thing or something going out in South Reno. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I had forgotten your name and I couldn't see your tag. And I knew it was Bill, but I didn't know if it was Bob, and I got you guys mixed up. And I think it was either Kim or Robert Weideman that bailed me out. It's Bill Whitney. So anyways, that's a memory I guess I'll cherish to some degree, but I really appreciate your support. You're orientated well to this work. It suits you well. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Board Member Lawrence. And there's kind of a funny story behind your story. And Mr. Webb and I were hired on the same day, 28-plus years ago. I got here 5 minutes before he did, but that's a bone of contention. But since that day, for the last 28 years, we've been getting mixed up regularly.
Are you trying to make me feel good? Because I need it.
I have done it myself on a number of occasions. So, Mr. Thomas.
I just want to take a moment to say thank you personally. Your professionalism was above and beyond, and your willingness to, or your support to help guide this board through certain issues that came up was greatly appreciated. Your input was well respected and was timely. It was a pleasure working with you, and you know, Bob has some shoes to fill, obviously, and I'm sure he will do a great job also for us, but thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all.
Thank you. All right, moving on to legal information and updates. Mr. Edwards.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We have Kathy Brandhorst.
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I'm also the United States President. I just wanted to let you know, I saw the bank robberies again through laser beams, and I recognized the people who are robbing the bank. Oh. They were sitting right here in this chambers. I just wanted to let you know, the more bank robberies that takes place in this city, you're not going to stop these people. I hope you take it into consideration that I have lost more of these employees and employers as tellers at the banks because, they do recognize the bank robbers even though they do wear masks sometimes. And these masks are still worn, in the bank robberies. You don't know how awful it is to have a machine gun and bullets go right through your bodies and your faces as you're standing there as the bank robbers are in the banks. But I just wanted to tell you, they are so poor, they can't even have $1 in their pockets. They don't even have they don't have a quarter in their pockets. Because where I live at the Donner, I saw maybe 15 purses, stolen from women, and maybe 20 wallets stolen from men. Because they're taking all the money out of those purses and wallets and stick it in their pockets to look like they do have a job, they do have a way to get an income. They don't have an income at all. That's why they need to steal purses and wallets right out of people's rooms or even in the casinos. I just don't know why this is still going on. These people were dead, they're deceased, they're no longer alive, they don't exist, but they're still here. Oh my God, they're still doing the same thing if they were in prison. They still kill and murder. Yes, they will steal that butcher knife right off the plate so they could steal and murder the guard. Maybe the security officer that's standing there, he will be murdered. And guess what? We've got another escape from the prison. We've got escapes from the jails again because that person's going to let the others out of the jail cells because they're all there for life in prison, life in jail.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we stand adjourned.